Hey everyone, welcome back to csforeveryone.com. I'm your host, Roberto Busey, and in this video we're going to be covering the else-if construct. Now, you've learned if statements, and we are aware that we can check a value, and if it is the case that that value is true, we can print something, else we can print something else. But what if we want to check multiple values? What if we have a variable that's called name, and we like the people named Robert and Joe and Jack and Jill, but we don't like other people. So in this case, we can use something called the else-if operator. And let's go ahead and let's try to check these names with what we already know. So var name is equal to prompt what's yo name. And now we can do if name is equal to Robert. We can console.log. What a great guy. Wow. And then we can do if name equals Jack. Then we can also, what a great guy. We can do if name is equal to Jill. I think y'all are getting the idea now, except, you know, this one's a gal, unless you're a guy named Jill. I'm not judging. And then you do else. Now this, you are not great. Now this is not exactly what we want, because A, it's not that efficient. Now, on its own, if you run through this one time, it's going to get the name, and if we say name is equal to Robert, then we're going to console log what a great guy. And then it's going to check Jack as well, and then it's going to check Jill, even if we already know that the name is Robert. So there's no way of stopping. Like, what if we want to stop checking if the name is equal to Robert? And even if the name is Jack, it's going to check Robert, it'll say no, and then it's going to check if the name is Jack, and it will say yes. But then it'll also check Jill. And then it will also print the else, because this else here is only paired up with this if. This else is not paired up with these other two ifs right here. So essentially we have an if statement here, an if statement here, and then an if-else statement here. This else does not sync up with these two ifs. It only syncs up with whatever the first if is above it. So this is inefficient, because if the name is equal to Robert, then it's also going to check Jack and Jill, and you don't want to do that. We already know that the name is Robert. You don't want to check values after you already know what the value is. And this is a beautiful thing called the else-if statement. So what we can do here is, let's just get back to this. You can do else if name equals Jack. And then we can do else if name equals Jill. And then you can do else. So the difference between this and what we had before is that this is all considered to be one if block. It's all considered to be one if statement. These are all synced up together. And so the beauty of this is that if the name is Robert, it will say, if name is Robert, yes, so we're going to print this, and then it stops checking these things. It skips all of this, and then keeps reading down your code and going whatever's below it. So the beauty of this is that it's more efficient, because the old way we were doing it, it was checking all of them, regardless of if we already hit the if statement that we wanted to hit, regardless of if we already knew what the name is. The beauty of this is that it stops checking once we hit the right value. So if the name is Jack, it will check Robert, it will check Jack, it will say, hey, this is it, it will print what a great guy, and then it will not check the rest. It will not do it. It stops and it keeps going. And now, eventually, this, even on its own, it's not a huge deal if you're just doing it one time. You can have a lot of if statements. You can have like 500 if statements. It will run pretty much instantly. The issue is when you start doing things with loops. And a loop is essentially what runs a piece of code over and over and over and over and over. And you're going to hit a point where your loops are going a long time, and they're looping through the same piece of code a lot. And if you don't have your else ifs, if you just have a bunch of ifs in there, it'll check every single one of those for each iteration through the loop. And that's going to slow you down. You want to have efficient programs. You don't want to have slow programs. And for checking values, this is a very efficient way of doing it if all the values are under the same ballpark. So like if they're all relevant to the same type, like if you all want to check name and you want to check for different values, this is a good way of doing it. There are other ways, such as using ORs within an if statement, and we'll cover that in the next video. But for now, this is a good way to increase your efficiency in your programs. So the main difference between just a bunch of if statements and ifs with else ifs is that if it hits a value, it will not check the rest. It will skip that and keep going down the program. So that's really efficient. Let's just go ahead and run this for fun because, I mean, that'd be nice. What is your name? Robert. What a great guy. Jake. Jake is not one of the names. Jake sucks, mate. What are you going to do? Poor Jake. So that's essentially that. That's all if and else if is. There are a few other nuances about it that we can cover in the future videos. But next up, we'll be using OR statements, which means that we can combine these else ifs into one statement. So we can say if name is equal to... We can say if name is equal to Robert, or name is equal to Jack, or name is equal to Jill. We can do that as well. That's another way. This syntax is not correct, and it's killing us for that, but we'll learn the syntax of that in the next video, and it's also a really good way of doing your programs. So see y'all around.